we'll just switch the roll call, the election of officers, if it's okay with you, to the end. With the hope that, or we can just do it. It's up to you guys.
We can wait. It's fine. I just think it's funny to elect them to positions when they're not here.
Teach them a lesson.
I just know when it comes to election, it's. I'm just gonna sit like this the whole thing. Got it.
Okay.
Approval of minutes?
Yeah, we're not quite live yet, so I think we're ready to go, though, and then can start the meeting here.
Are we not live?
We're not even. We're good? Okay. All right, great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Call to order the meeting of the Environmental Advisory Council for Wednesday, January 24th at 3 p.m. We'll start off by doing roll call. Michael Campbell.
Here.
Robert Howden.
Here.
Aaron Kerr. Sister Pat Lupo.
Here.
Sam Mason.
Here.
Matt Paz.
Present.
Freda Tepfer. Okay. The second item on our agenda is election of officers, but since maybe we'll switch that around. We'll have that at the end of the meeting so that we can see if anybody else comes, any of the others that are not present show up a little bit later for that. Third item on our agenda is the approval of the November 2024 meeting minutes. We should have a copy of that, and I think we sent that out about a month ago or so, maybe more.
Move to approve the minutes.
Okay,
Second.
great. All right. And Kat is still taking our notes for today. Thank you, Kat. New business. I had a few things, unless somebody else would like to go first. I sent this to you this morning, and I'm sorry for such short notice, but they just sent it this morning too. That's right. This is the EAC Network Virtual Conference registration. I have a few copies, actually, of the newsletter. I'll pass it this way. Yeah. So Freda had asked this morning if we were possibly able to get a group rate if we're all signing up to join virtually. I actually tried calling somebody this morning, but I didn't reach anyone. I was going to email Carol Grayshaw and just kind of see if she could direct me to the right person for that, to answer that question. It looks to be that it starts at 9, and there's a welcome. There's a lightning session from 9:15 to 10:30, which there's a whole host of case studies that they're going over and different projects and success stories. From 11 to noon, there's breakout sessions. 1 to 2, there's a breakout session, and 2:30 to 3:30, there's another breakout session. You pick one of two that you're available for. So something to throw out there, and see maybe we can, I don't know if there's a charge, but I'm assuming maybe there is. I didn't look into that yet.
I don't mean to speak out of turn, but I'm a member of the Meadville EAC,
Yeah.
and you can do up to 5 registrants from an EAC for $75, or it's $35 per person.
On there?
Yeah.
Okay.
For Meadville, 3 of us wanted to go, so we chose the 5-person one because it still is a cost savings compared to registering individually. But I'm not the one on the EAC who did the registration, but I could always link you to our former board chair who did it on our behalf.
Okay.
And you can't get a hold of her.
Okay, that sounds good. Well, you'll let me know who is interested in attending. I think it would be a very good thing. There's a keynote speaker, Dr. Diane Husick.
It's a Saturday?
It's the second page.
There is a Zoom access.
Yes.
I wasn't sure.
It's virtual. No, yeah, it's completely virtual. It's all day though. So.
Do you want us to tell you if we want to go? Because I'm going to be out of town that weekend.
Okay.
So.
No, now or whenever, or
Okay.
later. It's up to you.
I can't.
Okay. The other thing, in this packet that I sent around and also sent to you through email, there's a few there's a few grant opportunities in there. I'll be honest, I have not really looked at them yet. I don't know if that's something that we want to entertain at this moment, if it's appropriate. So if it's, but it's just something to take a look at. I can pass this one around, Kat, if you wouldn't mind.
You sent it to us.
I did send it to you also, yes.
So this is the conference?
Yes.
Is there an opportunity to pool registration or to get help?
You get up to 5 members for $75 for an EAC.
So do we have, are we gonna set that up?
We've just discussed it, and only one person said they couldn't make it yet, so.
Oh, I am interested too.
Okay, well, let me know, and we can sign a group up and get us on that. So, the other thing I just wanted to quickly address is that I sent out the library of bylaws that the EAC has, and I apologize because I sent them today, so I don't know if you had a chance to look through them. I printed out 2 of them and looked at them quickly. One was from Bethlehem, the other one was Allentown. I preferred Allentown over Bethlehem, but I'm happy to make changes or, draft this with you and try to get this for the next meeting so we can pass the bylaws, if that would.
Yeah, I only had a chance to look at Allentown, and I thought that they fit just fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I read the
With
Yeah.
very slight
I thought it was pretty
changes.
good.
Yeah, I thought it was pretty good too. And it's also noticed that both of these that I looked at did not select the governing body to appoint the chair. They chose to allow the EAC to select. So we're okay. I have a feeling there. Okay, so I can get some feedback from all of you once you get a chance to look at those, and I can present a draft bylaw to you next council meeting.
Sounds good.
Is there anyone else who has any new business? No?
When should we get feedback to you by? I think you should give us a deadline
For the bylaws?
for the bylaws.
No deadline, no feedback.
Yeah.
Whatever, 2 weeks, is that doable? Then that gives me enough time to, I guess what I should do is put together a draft bylaw and send it out to you, and then see if you want to make any additional changes. You want to put in things from other bylaws that are not in it, and maybe that's the way to do it before. So how
Okay.
about we say a week before? If you're looking at your calendar, a week before the next EAC meeting would be the deadline. And I'll try to send it out within the next 2 weeks after this meeting.
All right,
So
so
what-
you're gonna send us,
21st?
stuff by the 14th?
Sure, yep,
By February 14th.
okay.
Okay, so.
So draft
by-
bylaws,
Yeah, by February 14th, Valentine's Day,
And then our meeting is the
love,
28th.
and then our meeting is so the feedback by
21st.
the 21st,
Okay,
and then our next meeting is the 28th. So the meeting to vote, basically, right?
yes.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay. Any other new business? Okay, so we're going to move on to our presentations for today. The first presentation we have is Jenny Tompkins from Penn Future, who's going to give us an update on some of the plans that you have been working on, and some where we are at this moment. So, Jenny, do you want to?
Yeah, I guess the only clarification is knowing that Porter goes after me, how much introduction should I give to the city's current efforts around local climate action plan before I dive into what's happened in Leadville?
I think Porter's
We were
really
late, so we
focused on
decided
the
to wait on
P4P
that.
grant.
Okay.
So I don't know, and Porter's on. So hi, Porter. Porter Stevens is from Michael Baker International, who the city is contracted with as a consultant to us, and has really been helping us with the P4P grant. Porter, Jenny was asking if you had, are you focusing primarily on P4P, or do you delve into some of the local climate action plan priorities?
I'm focusing pretty exclusively on the Partners for Place program and the
One
city's
second,
application to the
Porter,
mini
you're
grant.
muted.
Oh,
Or at least we can't
It's,
hear you.
you're unmuted. You're not muted, it's us.
Is there any way to see that
Gotcha.
on this side? I mean,
Yeah, it'd be
Yeah.
nice if it could be.
Yes, there is a way.
You can't hear Matt.
No.
Oh, there we go. It's a little
testing,
better.
testing.
Tell us what you had for
I mean, I can just
breakfast.
give a primer.
Mm-hmm.
It's more helpful.
I think he.
Can you hear me now?
Because I took a quick look at the slides,
Okay.
and I think he's more focused on the grant. Never fails, system.
While he's trying to set up, can he hear us?
I think
I
so.
think
Porter, can you hear us?
Oh, okay.
Cool.
So I'm
He's gonna be a
kinda
little more
curious
specific.
if there's anything going on with the DCNR Community Conservation Partnerships Program grant. If the city's
Freda,
doing
let's
anything with it.
let Jenny do her presentation. We
Oh,
just
I
had.
thought Porter was going first.
No.
No, Jen.
Yeah, so if Porter's going to be more specific on a grant that the city received, I'll be a bit broader.
Okay.
So two folks here, Freda and Pat, were part of helping the city and Penn Future research EACs and the work that had been done prior by the 170 or so of these bodies that exist in Pennsylvania. And it turns out that, not unexpectedly, EACs have different relationships to local climate action planning and sustainability planning for the municipalities that they represent. That could be, in the case of one of the cities we looked into, the EAC was responsible for reviewing requests for proposal applications for potential vendors or consultants to create a climate action plan. Others have been tasked with doing the community outreach associated with formulating a plan. I'm part of the Meadville EAC, which I'll talk about in a little bit of detail with you all, which actually came after the publication and finalization of a climate action plan. So our role is actually implementing the plan approved by City Council. So where the City of Erie stands is there's a planning grant to do some initial foundational work toward a climate action plan that Porter is going to talk about. But I also wanted to mention that the city participated in a program with Penn State Sustainability Institute, I apologize if that's not their formal name, to do a greenhouse gas inventory for the city with the help of some students from Penn State, Maine. And they helped to lay some of the foundation that would be needed to set climate reduction goals and then have a plan in place for strategies and recommendations to reduce those emissions. So does everybody understand that? The mayor has at least committed to a greenhouse gas inventory and started to lay the framework for what would have to happen for a plan to be in place. And I think, I'm not sure we're getting to the point of a discussion today, but at least the point of my presentation and Porter's is to give you all the context you might need for the EAC to meaningfully engage in that process, whatever that engagement may be that you all would decide on what that would look like. But there are two pieces of information I wanted to share based on my experience. The first is the Penn Future Erie Our Water, Our Future Common Agenda, which is the foundation of the campaign that I manage. And I'm thankful for my predecessor and a number of community partners and scientific advisory folks who made this document possible. This is very wordy, so I apologize, but this is every single municipal level recommendation that we included in that common agenda, just to give you all a primer on the types of initiatives that you could prioritize. Obviously, you'll see that number one under addressing racism and environmental justice was creating an environmental advisory committee. Thankfully, the city did that as kind of a start to potentially opening up an opportunity to check off the rest of these or approach the rest of these recommendations. So we don't need to go through these in a ton of detail individually today, but the work that I do focuses on 8 different threats to water quality in the Pennsylvania Lake Erie watershed. Many of these are issues that the city is dealing with on a regular basis. Some more than others are the focus or the priority of the administration at present. But stormwater issues and surface runoff, pollution associated with that, climate change, extreme weather, pollution caused by plastics and fossil fuels, which plastics are fossil fuel based, so that's the connection there. Invasive species management, legacy industrial pollution, and a lack of collaboration between sectors. All things that EACs in other communities have focused on to differing extents as well. So I'm happy at any point if you all have questions, if these are priorities, are there ways that we can work together, if there are opportunities that you see. I'm here as a partner, ally of the EAC, so I welcome conversation about any of these and more that lie outside of the boundaries here. So any questions about that? I gave you a one-page summary of a 50-page document that can be found on our website, so I thought this was an easier way to at least get the conversation started and share this information with you all. In more detail, though, I wanted to discuss my personal experience as a member of the City of Meadville Environmental Advisory Committee and our role with the City of Meadville's 2022 Climate Action Plan. So this is just 2 pages of summary content about the EAC, how we're structured, how we came to be, and what we're focused on moving forward. So to provide a little context, the program that the City of Erie participated in for local climate action planning has changed since the City of Meadville was affiliated with the format of the program. The local climate action planning program for Pennsylvania used to be managed by DEP, but it was taken over by Penn State University. There was an official transfer. Both entities are still involved in providing some of that technical assistance, but it's now led by Penn State. The City of Erie participated under the Penn State umbrella. City of Meadville, it was the DEP umbrella. And they had technical assistance from ICLEI Governments for Sustainability USA and Allegheny College. So there was a partnership between government, higher ed, and the local municipality. We also had champions from City Council and the Planning Commission. The EAC now actually has a shared member with the Planning Commission in Meadville, which has been helpful in the past for some of that coordination. And there was a 10-person planning team that brought the plan to fruition. They met weekly or bi-weekly for nearly a year before the draft plan was published. And that included mostly Allegheny-affiliated folks, city representatives, and a few community members as well. They followed ICLEI's 5 milestones to climate mitigation, which, as you see here, is conducting an emissions inventory and forecast. That's the part that the City of Erie has gotten to thus far. If you were going to follow this procedure, you would then set an emissions reduction target.
ICLEI is,
Institute for, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember there.
so they're a nonprofit?
They're an international body focused on climate mitigation. I apologize that I don't know their exact acronym. But they were contracted with DEP through a separate contracting process back when this was a DEP program. So you may want to follow this particular process if the EAC engages in what the city is about to embark on by setting an emissions target, then developing a plan, implementing the plan, and monitoring emissions reduction and outcomes over time.
So is this plan for everybody or just the city?
It's citywide emissions. So not just the city's emissions, any emitter, any source of greenhouse gas emissions in the city of Meadville. This is a little bit of information about the public comment and outreach period, which is done primarily over a 6-month period. It was during the height of the pandemic in part, so most of the engagement in Meadville was virtual. And wanted to just highlight that we have a goal of net zero emissions by 2050 with an annual reduction target on top of that. And there is primarily strategies for mitigation or reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, but we also focus on adaptation and environmental justice commitments within our plan. And then I've outlined for you all the 8 sections of the plan as they're outlined for Meadville. This varies dramatically by community, what those priorities or sections are within these types of plans. This is what worked for us. And they kind of follow in order in our plan based on the amount of emission responsibility within those sectors. So business and industry is the largest source of greenhouse gas emissions in Meadville, for example. So we went through this. I was not part of this outreach process, but I wanted to share it with you all because we have some members of the EAC who carried over from that process. But in 2022, the climate action plan was published in Meadville, and then the ordinance for the EAC quickly followed that. The EAC was formed to carry forward the recommendations in the plan. So where we stand now is there are 4 subcommittees that are based loosely around the sections of our climate action plan. So the mobility subcommittee is actually focused on the transportation section of the plan. You can see some connections there. And we have membership, our 7 members, 2 from higher ed, 2 from the environmental nonprofit sector, 2 from the private sector, and 1 retired member that has a lot of experience both in government and nonprofit work. So similar to you all, a really varied set of experiences and the types of expertise that we bring to the table. So the subcommittee structure, I think, has been really beneficial for our work. It's been necessary because of the level of detail in the plan and the lack of staff capacity in Meadville, which is a lot smaller. You all are lucky that you have 2 staff sitting here today. We don't have any staff that regularly attend our meetings. We actually decided at one point we needed to have our own secretary because of the staff time needed for our meetings. I am the secretary of Meadville EAC, which is fine. But that gives you some perspective on a much smaller city. We needed those subcommittees to continue that work forward. And then I listed some of the ongoing initiatives and some of what we have planned for 2024. It took 6 to 12 months to get the subcommittees structured, meeting, and starting to align with the CAP and HEF goals. So just putting that in perspective, we are now over a year out from the formation of the EAC, and these are the types of initiatives in the docket. I just want to highlight really quickly the first 2 items here. The rest are kind of self-explanatory, or you could feel free to look into. But we have started a community partnership program that we're launching in the spring, which will allow us to have community partners commit to the CAP. And so it'll be more of a facilitated partnership where we can have conversations with them about what they're doing that aligns with our emission reduction goals, and create a system where we can highlight the great work that's happening instead of only focusing on all the unmet need that we have. And the second one I wanted to highlight is the DEP Shared Energy Manager Program. We actually found out last week that after applying, Meadville was accepted as a municipality under that program. And it actually links the city up with an engineering consulting firm who can add capacity to our goals. However, it's historically been focused on reducing emissions within the local government itself, so operations and buildings, energy efficiency. But they can also help with consulting services and research on items that may not pertain just to city or municipal emissions. So I'd encourage you all, if you're going to go down this route and the EAC is going to be involved in the local climate action plan, to start researching the Shared Energy Manager Program kind of from the beginning, because that's another value add and capacity building opportunity for the goals that you might have. So I'll send an electronic copy of this to Jackie and the rest of you, because I also linked to a number of Meadville resources, including our climate action plan, our ordinance. We have a Facebook page for the EAC that's been created recently, and our agendas and minutes are available. If the bylaws are helpful, that's fine, but Bethlehem is like the first city to really have a well-functioning EAC dating back 20 years, and that everybody kind of took the Bethlehem ones and improved upon them. As you see in Allentown's case, they just expanded on what the gaps may have been in Bethlehem. So the city of Meadville will just be an expansion of what already exists in large part. Does anyone have questions about this?
I had one question.
Yeah.
I was curious, so you have a category called waste reduction, but there's nothing about source control, actually. Yeah, to me, these are post-source control sort of things.
Admittedly, this is not an area where we've had a subcommittee work in detail about that, so it's a good point, but it's not something that we identified as a priority thus far. Honestly, we haven't. Yeah, so housing, energy production, commercial energy efficiency, and transportation have really risen to the top of our expertise and priority. But I do think it's an area where we get more community feedback, so I could see us in the next few years definitely doing something there. Is this helpful? I don't want to just like lay information on you and then it be like, what is happening? Because I didn't probably do the best primer of explaining where the city is with potentially embarking on a climate action plan. Apologies there.
It's understandable that you didn't know what ICLEI stands for, by the way. Just because they don't even really say it on their website, and I think it's because it's a global it's a NGO, a global NGO. So it probably comes from a language that is not English. So they have ICLEI and then dash local governments for sustainability. which obviously is not what ICLEI stands for, but basically they are
Exactly.
local governments for sustainability, so.
So if there are opportunities to work together between Meadville EAC and Erie EAC, I'm also happy to help facilitate those connections too down the line, if it's helpful.
I could see maybe down the line having possibly like a working session with them, bringing them in to do something like that. They're only 25 minutes from us. Okay. Anything else? No?
I've got a question. To what extent does the subcommittee structure, which identifies 4 specific things that are being advanced, to what extent did that depend on the nature of the greenhouse gas emissions inventory?
It did in part. So we definitely, recognizing our role, because we were specifically tasked with implementing the plan, we did choose the 3 to 4 top emission sources in the
Okay.
city. However, that doesn't mean that those aren't also the most challenging, because most of those actions lie with community partnerships, not with the city taking its own action. So I would say, in particular, I'm on the commercial energy efficiency and the weatherization subcommittees. The commercial energy efficiency is complicated because it's community partners and private sector partners. So we've actually had initial conversations with Green Building Alliance, who has your 2030 district here in Erie, to do a similar model in Meadville, because the framework is already in place to implement their technical assistance, rather than a volunteer EAC taking on that role instead. So we found that a lot of it is just what models can we replicate that have been successful elsewhere and bring those as advisors.
I guess the point of my question is, if we were to follow a similar pathway, we first need to take a good look at our inventory to know where our problem spots are.
Yeah, in Meadville, it's been helpful because the professor at Allegheny who facilitated the greenhouse gas inventory process is now on our EAC.
Mm-hmm.
So he's carried that institutional knowledge forward.
Where's Erie at with doing the inventory?
I was there for the initial presentation, but I'm not sure what has changed or shifted since mid-2023, I think, when
Has
those
that been
results were published.
publicized anywhere?
Sarah Peelman has a presentation from the
Yes,
Penn State
yes.
students with a summary.
But we're missing some data. I know that.
How
We've
much on transit?
I know we've missing some data from National Fuel. That's what I've heard. I don't know much about that. I can get some more information from Sarah. But yeah, I know there's some missing pieces still to it.
So I think, Mike, to your point, that would be a critical part of next steps.
Right. Thank you. This is great. I think it's very helpful to have them all.
You guys at least have the benefit of organizing during the planning phase. We've been handed something that we're trying to catch up with the historical knowledge in some part, because only 2 of the 7 EAC members have that context. So they spent the first 3 months just re-explaining, I think, what a lot of the process was to get to the point that we were at. You all are going to be coming to the table with the same amount of information.
Was Sarah tasked? Sarah Peelman, was she leading that inventory, or who was leading that?
Sarah was the point person for the city, I believe, with the data people.
Okay.
From
Penn State.
But Penn State,
Barron, but we also
Not
have-
Barron,
or
Penn State, Maine, University Park, yeah.
Um,
Penn State Barron did do a greenhouse gas audit for the EMTA. So we have information now on the EMTA emissions, which unsurprisingly is mostly buses.
so Sarah was the city.
I know, it's shocking.
Jack,
I guess I was thinking that they weren't looking at, maybe it's in a different category of what topic, but that as we look at sources, what the difference would be if we had more transit in terms of our emissions.
Oh, I don't think they started to do like reduction scenario planning or anything. But I do know, Jackie, that there was a faculty advisor from Penn State that was the connection between Sarah and the students, so maybe that person
Peter
hold-
Buck.
holds the most information.
Peter Buck would probably, and then I forget the other,
Randy something?
yeah, yes. I can find the names. But yeah, there's 2 people at Penn State University Park. I'm not allowed to call it Maine, you can. But yeah, there's 2 people at Penn State University Park that are the faculty leads, and so yeah, they were in contact with Sarah Peelman. And I've heard conflicting accounts on as to the completeness of the data. I do know that there were issues getting data from First Energy, which is
I said First National, First Energy.
First Energy, which is Penelec, right? I think it's,
Yeah.
Yes.
is that right?
That's
Yeah.
Penelec.
Yeah.
Was
So
it
they were-
also National Fuel, though, as well?
I think the national fuel data they have.
They have,
And that's
Yeah.
my fault, because I got them confused.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're really easy to
Okay.
get confused. But yeah, I think it was
Penelec.
First Energy that was, so Penelec that was being difficult.
Mhm.
And that's especially important if you're talking about moving towards electrification. I think that's partly why they're being difficult, is
Mhm.
because the infrastructure around electrification in the city of Erie is not ideal.
Mhm.
I think there's a lot that needs to be done. So my students looking at the EMTA, who have a plan to convert all of their fleet from diesel to CNG, are looking at the data that doesn't actually do a whole lot with regard to their greenhouse gas emission. It's a 3% reduction if you completely change all of the buses over. So really, for the EMTA to make a significant impact, they would have to electrify their fleet. But the question is the infrastructure then to support that. And so I think that's something that we would need to be aware of. I think it's very important that we're kind of cognizant of that as we're making recommendations. Because there's a huge desire, and understandably, to electrify things, but we have to make sure we have the infrastructure in place to support that.
So when you say electrification, are you talking about, like, I have a gas furnace, a gas stove, are you talking about capacity for everybody to have a more electric home? Or are you talking about charging stations, or what are you referring to?
So, generally it's yes, moving everything to electric, so heating systems to electric, but a lot of it is vehicles, and the infrastructure to support the charging. So wonderfully, the city just got the, $3 million, $5 million to get, electric, garbage trucks, which is fantastic. But, to convert the entire fleet over to electric, do we actually have the capacity to support the charging of those? And it's great on the environmental justice front, right? To not have those gas-powered vehicles driving through these EJ40 zones is fantastic, but we have to make sure that we can support charging them, is what I'm saying.
Thank you.
Jenny, a question on the solar subcommittee. Were they looking at implementing more solar to replace other energy sources? Is that what that is?
Yeah, so there's a professor, Ian Carbone, who's an EAC member and the chair of our committee, who actually does solar courses at Allegheny, and his students have done a couple of community-based installations on the Unitarian Universalist Church in Meadville. They're now working with a housing nonprofit to do an installation, or our local community foundation. So those have been the 3 shovel-ready projects. Is everyone familiar with I can't say this, recorded, the questionable old 60s DEP building in Meadville? It's actually owned by the city of Meadville. It's not energy efficient at all, and there's currently a feasibility study to put solar on the roof of that large building downtown. So our solar subcommittee is helping with trying to finance that project.
Yeah.
Giving me a weird look.
It seems odd to put a solar installation on a building that's, okay.
So the way that some of the financing works, previously there wasn't a lot of federal tax or rebate opportunities for nonprofits, of course, as non-taxable entities, but there's been some flexibility under the Inflation Reduction Act that allows nonprofits and local governments to qualify for renewable energy subsidies. And part of that is that the city can actually put the solar on the DEP building, which is a huge source of energy, and have that offset cost across the entire energy landscape. So that's the largest roof, and they can actually pick and choose which buildings that's offset the cost for. So DEP may not recognize all of the energy savings for that array. There may be a negotiation for DEP to get some utility cost reduction while the city also reduces costs for some of their other buildings. So there's kind of a negotiation process happening there. Sorry that was really wonky, but it gives you some perspective for some of the work that subcommittee's doing.
Could I pick up on one thing that you were saying with the vehicles? Is anybody trying to address sort of Amazon, UPS, FedEx, and all that stuff driving around my neighborhoods too? Is there any study or do we have any idea where they are electrification of their fleet?
I have no idea. That's where we get into that corporate,
Yeah.
having those corporate partners.
Okay, thank you, Jenny. That's very helpful. Yeah. And you'll send the the digital. Thank you. Okay. Next, well, hopefully, Porter, you are able to be heard here. Maybe you'll try a test.
Can you hear me now?
Oh. He can hear us just fine, though. That was pretty obvious. No, he unmuted, but we just can't hear him.
We haven't joined
No luck?
audio.
Can you hear me at all?
Apparently, yeah. Apparently we have, despite the fact that it says that we haven't, because he can hear us.
Does this happen every meeting that's here?
Yes.
has.
Yeah.
Yeah, for us, I just wondered for other groups.
Can you try saying
Tell us what you
something else?
had for breakfast.
Can you hear me now?
Oh, that's a little bit better. Wait,
Go
let
on.
me
All
try
right.
this. Okay,
How about now?
All right.
better.
Little better.
I think this is how it was last time.
Yeah.
Carol
It was not
Gracia,
great.
which
We
was
just have to keep our mouth shut.
If you could speak up, that would be very helpful.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm
and
just really
Porter-
quiet in the room?
Yes, I'll make sure everybody's
Move
quiet.
the microphone
No,
closer.
I'm sounding really quiet
Yes,
in the room?
but we
Okay.
can hear you.
Can you move it even closer?
Are you able to share your slides?
Yes, I'd
Okay.
be happy
Okay,
to.
perfect. So.
Let me get my presentation ready to go.
Screen sharing.
Yeah, it's a big room. Echoes. So yeah, while they're
Host
getting
says
ready,
disable
since
participant
y'all were
screen
late,
sharing.
we moved the election of officers to at the end, right before the end, since y'all weren't here.
Okay, now I can turn
Now
the
we
TV
can-
down, maybe?
I personally said that y'all should be elected to whatever positions we wanted.
But I was
because
late, I
you
wasn't
weren't here.
absent. I wasn't,
I know, I have you marked as late, but I'm just saying.
I turn this up all the way. Turn it down? Okay.
They notified us about the conference and told us to tell them if we want to go. And I simply,
I turned it to
for,
7.
no, 5, said 5 people can go for $75.
Can you say something, Porter?
Hello?
Oh,
Can you hear me?
Nice,
better,
that's
better,
nice.
Yes, better.
Okay.
They didn't, I assumed so, but I don't know.
Okay. and
I
then-
also have to be enabled to share my screen, just
Yes,
FYI.
they're gonna
Fix that.
give you that right now.
Thank you.
So I don't think an answer was given on who's paying the $75. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And
So,
I'm not sure how that works yet. I need to find that out.
And if there's like.
Was screen
10
share
of us,
enabled?
8 of us, what is that?
I don't know. I called them. They didn't answer. So I was going to reach out to Carol Grayshaw or Jenny has a contact, but I'll find out about cost and then if we can get some kind of group rate for sure. Yeah. I don't think we have a budget.
All right, Stevie, you should be able, or Porter, I'm sorry, you should be able to share.
We can see your slides.
Yes.
But you are muted. There we go.
Sorry, the mute button disappeared on me.
All right.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving me the opportunity. I'm excited to be here to talk about the Partners for Place program and how it could potentially benefit environmental and racial justice projects being conducted in the city of Erie. So just to briefly cover what I'll be talking about today, I'll be going over the Partners for Place program, which I'll hereafter refer to by its acronym P4P. The Funders Network, which is the organization, the philanthropic organization that runs the program, and also give you some background to the City of Erie's grant application to the P4P program and how we are proposing to use that funding moving forward. So first, so just to kind of start broad and steadily narrow it in, gives a little bit of background on the Funders Network. So it is a philanthropic organization that I could kind of describe it as like an organization of organizations, where it has about 170 national, regional, and community foundations in the U.S. and Canada. Its vision statement is there on the screen for you to read if you'd like, but I think it's best to describe it really as a facilitator, where they work with their constituent organizations to coordinate and to facilitate coordination and cooperation between those organizations, and really try to align their goals, align their different efforts to really bring a lot of resources and energy to bear on important issues. Just to give you a few examples of some of their kind of primary strategies that they use, they coordinate education, information sharing between the funding organizations that comprises their membership. They do a lot of professional development with their funding organizations, so leadership training, skill expansion, helping facilitate professional relationships, and really trying to help them expand their impact as grant makers. And as I briefly mentioned earlier, also really working to help different organizations, especially if they're different organizations in like the same region or city, helping align their agendas, their efforts, their interests, and try to really facilitate collaboration on different issues. And ultimately, most importantly, trying to cultivate connections between a funder and engagement or grant opportunities. Just to briefly cover a few of their areas of focus, just to help you get a sense of what kind of organization they are. They do a lot of issue-focused work, so topics like climate change and the environment, disaster preparation and recovery, transportation, mobility, water issues in urban areas, and what's increasingly become a larger focus of theirs, equity, which I'll give a little more detail about later in the presentation. They also have a number of place-based initiatives, so collaboration, partnership efforts that focus on a particular geographic area. For example, they have a network of funders that they are developing and facilitating in the San Joaquin Valley, because that is a fast-growing part of California. They also do a lot of work in Los Angeles. And as I alluded to before, they have a strong focus on developing partnerships and leading partnerships, one of which is the Partners for Place organization. And they also do a lot of professional development. They hold a conference, networking events, again, to all help develop their constituent funding organizations. So now to give a little more background on the Partners for Place grant program. This was launched in 2012 by a partnership of the Funders Network and the Urban Sustainability Directors Network. It's supported by a partnership of various different funding organizations like the JPP Fund, the Candida Fund, the New York, I think, Community Trust, Pisces Foundation, Kersey Foundation, so quite a few organizations support this effort. Its primary focus is on urban sustainability and green stormwater infrastructure. So how can we create more equitable, more sustainable, more climate resilient cities and neighborhoods? To date, it's awarded $10.9 million in grants which have seeded a total of $21.6 million in total investment. So it's a very well-used program. You may potentially have heard of it, being taken advantage of by other cities in the region or other places in the country. As I'll explain in more detail next, it actually has really two different grant opportunities. There's full grants and mini grants, and I'll explain the full grant next. So the full grant program is a one-to-one matching grant, meaning for every dollar that a city or community can put up, the program will match it. You can be awarded $45,000 to $150,000 for a one-year project, or $75,000 to $180,000 for two-year projects. Crucially, at least 50% of a local match for a grant has to come from a local foundation. So to give an example, if there's a program or a project that costs $100,000, the community can put up $50,000. The program will match that for another $50,000, and at least $25,000 has to come from a local foundation, so that there's buy-in from the local foundation community. In recent years, especially since 2018, which was I think their last strategic plan that the program developed, there's been a significant emphasis on creating equitable, more sustainable communities. As I'm sure you all well know, a lot of the communities that are now bearing the brunt of the impacts of climate change are also communities that historically have dealt with a lot of both environmental and racial justice issues. They're ones that have to deal with a lot of pollution, were historically redlined. So the program has recognized that there's a need for a strong emphasis on providing funding for projects in these communities. And to that end, they've created a few additional terms that you would see through a lot of their program literature, and also in the City of Erie's application. The communities that they want to work with the most, they refer to as frontline communities. So those are communities that are most impacted by historic oppression, economic disadvantage, environmental harm, both historic and present, or in the future in regards to climate change. So these really are communities, as the name says, that are on the front line of a lot of the issues that the program is trying to address. And you also see the term frontline community group, who is a group, be it a neighborhood organization, a nonprofit, church group, whose primary mission it is to represent and serve those frontline communities and try to improve the quality of life within them. In contrast to the full grant program, there is the mini grant program, which is what's most relevant to our discussion today. As you can see, it's a much smaller program. It awards up to $10,000. And what really makes it distinct from the full grant program is that instead of providing funding for the completion of a specific project or a plan, it really focuses more, I think, on building partnerships. So I like to characterize it as a grant program to fund planning before we plan, if that makes any sense, where it really works to facilitate collaboration between different groups that want to work together on towards a specific goal, or accomplish a project, work on a specific issues, to make sure that their goals are aligned, that they can effectively work together so that they can be productive in how they work towards any kind of equitable, sustainable climate action, green stormwater infrastructure project. So before you take on a project, this grant program helps you make sure that internally you have the structure in place that makes you the most effective you can be in using any additional funding to accomplish your goals. Applications, just very generally, they must include a frontline community group. So it needs to work to develop relationships with a frontline community. So, and also it needs to include a place-based funder, which is a term to refer to really just a philanthropic organization or any kind of entity that regularly makes grants within a community. So someone who's locally active in the community that you want to whose priorities and issues you want to address. Also, it should be noted that while a municipality can be a participant, it can be part of a group, it can actually receive the funds. You have to designate a 501c3 to actually be the grant recipient as part of the application process. And while this program, you don't have to then apply for a full P4P grant, this is typically, I think, used to prepare a partnership or group to apply for a full Partners for Place grant. You may hear us or in any documentation we shared that we may sometimes refer to the mini grant program as a phase 1, quote unquote, and the full grant program as a phase 2, because sometimes that's how they typically function. So now that we've gotten kind of a good background of Funders Network, the Partners for Place program, and the mini grant program, now we'll move into how the City of Erie has applied for this program and what we intend to use the funding for. So just to give a bit of history, a partnership in the City of Erie did submit an application to the P4P mini grant program in 2022. The application partners included the City of Erie, the Sustainability Director, the Hammett Health Foundation, and also CRANE, which stands for any who may not know, the Community Resilience Action Network, CAFE, the Culture Arts Festivals and Events Organization of Erie, and PAC Grant. And very broadly, the project concept was to create a collaboration partnership, a sort of a third space, if you will, where the city, environmental partners, and frontline communities could come together to develop a plan of action to address climate issues, environmental issues, racial justice issues in the city. So really to create a place that all these groups who don't always end up in the same room to really be able to collaborate effectively to develop community consensus to how we can start addressing some of these issues. The city was awarded a full grant of $2,000, and CAFE was designated as the grant recipient, and they still are ones who are holding on to the funds. So that was in 2022. Fast forward to 2024, the grant funding was not used. There was really no specific reason why that happened. It was issues such as staff turnover, other priorities among project partners. Just as sometimes happens, it just got shifted to the back burner. Michael Maker International was hired by the city in summer of last year for general technical professional services to help the city make progress on a number of different projects, and we selected at the beginning of that relationship the Partners for Place mini grant as a subject of our efforts. So we started looking at how can we kind of restart the project, reconnect with the partner organizations who were part of the original application, and begin to move it forward so we can take advantage of those funds. So we've been working on it for a couple months now, and where we stand now is our proposal is it's pretty similar to what was originally proposed, is to create a partnership between the City of Erie and its constituent departments and related organizations. What's referred to in the P4P literature as core frontline partners, but are really environmental partner organizations like CRANE, PAC Grant, Hammett Health Foundation, and frontline communities, which for the rest of the presentation I'll just refer to as communities, just for the sake of simplicity. Really the idea is to try to create a forum for all these different groups to come together and discuss and develop community consensus on key environmental issues and projects that the city and environmental partners can then take back to utilize in their work to develop real environmental policy and make progress in some of these issues. And most importantly, this would ensure that communities would have a proactive role where they're at the table at the beginning of a project or process so that their voice is heard, rather than a reactive role where, as sometimes does happen, they often aren't involved in a project until the traditional public meeting where a lot of things are already pretty far down the pike. So trying to get their foot in the door and have them play a role in the process much earlier so that their needs and their priorities are reflected in the final process or product. Just to briefly cover a few different elements, groups who would be participating in this project. There'd be what's referred to as the P4P coordinator, which is just another terminology for the project manager, which would consist of Michael Baker's staff. There would be a project management team, which would be really the head administrative group who would lead and organize the mini grant process, create a lot of the draft documents, and lead the project. There would be an advisory committee, which would be representatives of all the different partner organizations and who would really be the big sounding board for the project management team and help us write and vet different elements of the partnership before we go bring it to the larger community. And those partner organizations would include the Environmental Action Committee. So this is where we would want to have the AC present to help us develop this process, help us to create this partnership. And finally, and most importantly, representatives from community organizations who would have a seat at the table and help us kind of form the final makeup of the partnership and its structure. So to briefly go over the general project schedule. So this would be a 6-month project. We would hope to start next month, February of 2024. Some of the tasks that we would accomplish in that time, we would meet continuously with the advisory committee throughout the project to check in, review different documents that we'd be creating, planning how we would engage with community organizations. The advisory committee would be a huge part of helping us make initial contact with different communities throughout the city because we know they've done a lot of really great work both developing environmental priorities and also developing relationships with a lot of these same organizations. So we certainly want to enlist their help in making contact. We'd also be reviewing existing plans, so seeing what work has already been done because we know a lot of hard work has already been accomplished. So looking at plans with the city, like Area Refocused, but also looking at some of the documentation that a lot of the partners have created, like the vulnerability assessment for Erie County recently completed by PAC grant, and also, as Jenny just mentioned in her presentation, the common agenda for protecting PA's Lake Erie watershed. So what can we take from those documents to help inform our process? Most importantly, we would be engaging with community organizations and really engaging with them to both discuss where current engagement efforts are falling short. So, what are we missing? How can we better interact and get them involved in talking about environmental issues and racial justice issues in the city? And finally, working with both the advisory committee and community organizations to develop and approve a vision, a goal, and the structure of the partnership so that at the end of the process, we have a organization that's ready to go. Now, so what kind of outcomes are we looking from this? Like, what do we want this partnership to accomplish? And what we're really thinking of right now is that this really could serve as a public engagement element for developing and implementing environmental policy in the city of Erie, where it would ideally create a venue for developing relationships and building trust between communities, neighborhoods in the city, city entities, and environmental organizations. Just to give an example from the EAC's perspective, if you are working to create a policy or working in a project as part of your work, this could potentially become a place where if you're wanting to facilitate engagement with a particular part of the city, a particular neighborhood, this could be somewhere you could come to talk to representatives from that area or different organizations from that area and say, how can we best engage with the general public in this part of the city? Where do we need to go? What are the best methods that could spark the most engagement? And then once you've done that outreach, you could potentially bring it back to this group and say, here's what we found out. What do you think? How can we digest this? So there's a lot of collaboration and trust building in that area, just to kind of give an example. Ultimately, we wanted to provide an opportunity for organizations to discuss environmental issues and priorities with community members. So I hope that helps solidify how it's distinct from the EAC, and that it brings a strong public engagement element into it that could become a tool for you to use in your work to better connect with the general community in the city of Erie. So that's my presentation. Again, I knew I threw a lot of stuff out at you in 20 minutes, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Porter. I just wanted to mention also that, the city, when I first took on this role, I had heard about P4P and, really didn't know much about it. And there was some discussion whether or not we should pursue this grant or what should we do with it. I mean, it's not a lot of money. It's not guaranteed that we get the implementation money. But we came together, we decided, with the help of some of our core partners as well as Michael Baker, that we did want to pursue this grant because we felt that not only did it engage those fringe communities, but it also was kind of a stepping stone for us for a much larger, more robust maybe engagement plan, and also for implementation money. So that was kind of the background of why we continued to go forward with doing this. And as you see, it's a pretty quick turnaround. I mean, it's not a large amount of money, and so 6 months, we should be done in 6 months, hopefully. And that would allow us to then, in March, was it, Porter, or is it March of next year that the Phase 2 implementation grant is open, or I know there was a date.
Yeah, so the grant application window is not standard with the Phase 2, with the full grant program. It's typically, from what I've been able to see from past rounds that I've been able to see online, it's typically opens either the very end of a year and then goes into the early spring. So like I think this past year was December to maybe February or March.
Okay.
So that kind of time frame. It unfortunately is not easy to find when the next grant window is going to open. That's not readily available online. But I think that's the general time frame is early winter to early spring.
Okay. Yeah.
So, sort of on a related note, so right now, DCNR Community Conservation and Partnership Program grants are open till April 3rd, and there's one Community Recreation and Conservation Planning. So I wondered if that's something you are aware of, and if this group is looking at it at all. Planning projects lay the groundwork for future land acquisition, development, and management of parks, recreational facility, critical habitat, open space, natural areas, greenways, and river watershed corridors. That's just one of the...
Is C2P2 already funding the city's parks master plan?
Yeah, I was going to
process?
say, we're in the process of finalizing our steering committee for the comprehensive parks and rec plan, so we haven't even started that project yet. That sounds pretty much, we've already, I think that's the one, unless, is that Sarah's? Sarah also has a DCNR grant too.
Hers is a Keystone Tree Fund.
Keystone, okay.
Are there going to be...
Yeah,
pool
same
of
funding
money,
stream.
just sort of-
Yeah.
Are there going to be any regular sitting people on the steering committee? In the past, it's been like just a whole bunch of different people who work in different departments and not really actual people.
The DCNR has a very strict, everything has been quite strict in terms of the scope, the steering committee requirements. So they set that for us. We have to have so many residents, we have to have so many internal staff members. So we are just abiding by what the regs say for this grant. We're hoping to have, I mean, We have at least 2 seats for residents right now.
Yeah, I had asked to be on it, and you said
Yeah.
I couldn't do double, but if you still have one, I would still be interested.
Okay. Any other questions for Porter on the P4P? No? That means you did a good job, Porter. Okay, well, thank you. I think Porter will be giving the EAC some updates as we move through the process, especially with the February kickoff for the grant. So, yeah, that's great.
Porter, can you email out the doc you sent or you showed?
The presentation.
Yeah, the presentation.
Yes, I'd be happy to.
Thank
I'll
you.
send that, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Porter.
Yeah, thank you. I did want to mention before we go on to the next item, which is the election of officers, Jasmine Flores, who's here with us today, who's the newly elected chair for the president, for City Council, and also the EAC's new liaison. So I happened to see Jasmine in the hall, and I said, "Oh, you're coming to the meeting, right?" And she said, "I'll try to be there." So thanks for being here, and we're glad that you have met our members.
Thank you for willing to participate and making sure that everything is done for our community. I know that people were concerned about environmental justice, but I did hear from the presentation that we're covering our basis. But I just definitely want to make sure that we're listening to all the communities that were left behind, because Erie is definitely a cesspool of environmental hazard. So, as long as we have the right people doing the work, I'm pretty sure all voices will be heard. So that gives me hope. Thank you.
Thanks, Jasmine. Okay. Should we do public comment or or election of officers? Or let's do election of officers first. So from the bylaws, even though we don't have bylaws yet, from the bylaws that I've looked at, a chair, vice chair, and secretary are primarily the 3 officers that are voted upon. I don't know if you wanted me to it's the same kind of thing. The chair is the one who presides over the meeting. Vice chair would hold the meeting or hold any other things if the chair was not present. And the secretary would keep minutes, records of the EAC's regular and special meetings under the guidance of the chair. The chair would also work with the staff lead, which is me, to set the agenda. So,
I had a question.
Yes.
Is there anybody here who, because of their schedule or whatever, doesn't want to be nominated for anything? Oh, for gosh. Really, really, really? That's everybody.
Really.
Well,
Shouldn't I ask?
yeah.
Good question.
I was the first.
Ah.
Just saying.
You did such a good job being the spokesperson during
thank
the
you.
press conference.
I think the hardest job is the secretary, to be honest. That's the toughest job, is to get the minutes together. So it falls in your court now as to what you want to if somebody wants to make a motion, or if you want to talk about it, if you want to. Typically, the election is done the first meeting of the year, but due to that we do not have bylaws yet, maybe we table it for next time, but I don't know if that's necessary.
How about I make a motion, we have elections based on the general bylaws that are out there already, and then we go and have elections so that we can say that we decided to have them.
So you're saying you're making a motion that at the next meeting?
No, that we do it today.
Oh, I don't think you have to make a motion for
Okay.
that. We have to make a motion, though, to nominate someone. So,
So nobody wants to be chair?
Well, I didn't raise my hand to say I wouldn't, but I hadn't nominated anybody.
I was asking if anybody wanted to be. So you're saying you would be okay being chair?
I wouldn't not want to do it, yes. I would do it if I was nominated.
So I nominate Freda to be chair.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
So the primary thing would be, I'm sorry, she would work with the staff liaison
To set
to
the
set the
agenda.
agenda.
And also preside over the meeting. So actually, now that you are chair, you then will take the responsibilities of
Right.
handling vice chair and also secretary and the adjournment, public comment adjournment of the
Right.
meeting.
Okay,
So-
so that's what we're voting on.
Yes.
I'm totally out of date with Robert's rules, but anyway, so we shall move to the election of a vice chair. At which point we have to go to the reluctant bunch who would like to nominate someone to be vice chair.
I'm not against doing the chair, vice chair.
Okay,
Hey, Matt.
would someone?
I nominate Matthew Putz to be vice chair.
Second?
It's been seconded. All in favor? Oh, wait,
Aye.
sorry. Chair should say
Yeah.
that.
So, okay, so the nominations are closed. So-
Does anyone else want
All right, did anybody else want to nominate anybody? Okay, so, all in favor of electing Matthew Puz the vice chair?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
You've been outvoted? You have.
You get to run the May meeting, by the way. Yeah.
Do that.
Okay, and then we have secretary. Who would like to nominate someone to be secretary?
I have a question. If we have a person from the city that's serving in that capacity,
Who is more than willing to hand it off?
But could we ask the person from the city to be
Yeah,
secretary? No,
don't
we're
you
not
come-
allowed to
Will you
be.
be coming to the meeting?
Is there anything
Or is
we
that-
wouldn't want her to
She's
do?
not a member.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
a voting member.
Right.
If it's valuable, all I do is take the notes from Meadville during the meeting. The staff liaison still puts all of the agendas and minutes up online, does all the publication in the paper.
I already handled it.
I already do that anyways for
So-
every
so
other
it's-
other board.
I
Yeah.
did not do a good job of selling what I have to do. I literally just take the notes during the meeting, that's it.
Well, the secretary, generally for all of our other boards, commissions, and councils, takes the notes, puts it in format, and then sends it to
Yeah, I do
the
that.
the staff lead, to handle that, and then we post it on the website.
And can I say, there's really two ways to take minutes. There's the people who write down every single thing, and then there's the people who just write down what actually happened. So
Yeah.
if you're one of those exhaustive people, that's not really required, especially since, are these going to be available? They're on the YouTube,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Everything will be
So-
available.
We just have to have minutes that are a record of what happened, not a
Correct.
diary of what happened.
That's a good point.
With that, does anybody want to either self-nominate or nominate someone for secretary?
Look at the people who have taken notes today. I just sat and listened, so I mean, I don't even have a pen.
You did that on purpose.
Bob, would you be willing?
No. I am a terrible note taker.
I as well.
There's 4 people left.
It's only for a year. Somebody's got to do it, right? Can you do it for 6 months and then switch?
Your bylaws aren't created.
Yeah, I mean, you could, right?
Oh,
You could hand it off after 6 months.
Well, the reason why I asked about if there is a person who is currently serving in that capacity, if they could continue, couldn't we make our bylaws indicate we don't have to have that office?
Well, I kind of
Or-
asked Kat to fill in for me at this moment, just really to help out.
Okay, so it was just set up as
Yeah, I
temporary.
mean, it was really to help me
Okay.
out because, just at the beginning of this, and I'm
So
grateful
you
that
weren't
you.
planning to be here because of your background?
Well, that's why I was asked to be involved,
Yeah.
because of my background.
Right.
But I can't, my city position comes first and foremost.
Right. She's Renee's assistant, so that's the whole job.
I would have volunteered to do it. I've served as a recording secretary for other organizations, but I'm not going to be in Erie. I'm going to be in Ireland for 2 months in a row,
Okay,
beginning in March. So I wouldn't, it'd be dumb for me to be
well,
the
I'll
secretary.
sub for
Okay.
Dr. Campbell when he's away.
So I'll do
March?
it.
I nominate Mike Campbell to be secretary.
Just so everyone knows, I can't do it for
That's
2 months
fine.
in a row, so it's, because I'm not going to be here.
And,
We'll
and.
find a sub.
And so maybe the bylaws can indicate that the secretary can delegate a substitute, since that's.
I don't think you'd have to have that in the bylaws.
No,
I
okay,
think, it's just something, as something comes up, then you ask somebody else.
fine. Okay.
Yeah, I like being a secretary because it gives me something to do at a meeting, you know.
All right, you've been nominated. Does anybody want to second the nomination? All right, Sister Pat seconds.
Thank you. Okay,
Thank
so, are there any other nominations? Can we vote on
Aye.
Mike as our secretary?
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Opposed? Abstain? Okay.
all right, so is there any, we did public,
we didn't do it.
oh, I heard you say it, but, yeah, okay. Is there anybody, we're not on Zoom with the public. Okay, so is there anybody else who has anything to offer?
I didn't really have anything to offer, but I do know that someone who was here to do public comment suggested maybe not waiting to the very end because he had to go get another thing to make it to. Just maybe like a suggestion to make sure that if there's some people in the audience who might want to see that.
We can always revise the agenda based on who's here and what the time is.
A lot of groups that I've been on actually have public comment. right
At the beginning.
At the beginning.
Beginning.
I think that
Yeah.
would be a good idea.
The MPO actually allows you to comment on the agenda in the beginning and anything else at the end, because sometimes, but, yeah, we could,
Yeah.
That's good.
Public
What?
comment at the beginning and end.
all
Okay.
right, let's do it that way.
Well, I'll put it
I
in,
need to
I'll
go.
put a order of business into the draft, and you guys can comment on it then,
Right.
okay?
Okay.
Okay, and our next meeting is,
Our next meeting is the
The
28th
28th.
of February,
okay.
yes.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
She went.